again for another feature card buddy fight deck profile. So I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. So let's get started. Today's deck is the Dragonblood Sect upgraded budget deck profile. So this deck I have technically done before, but then I upgraded with a bunch of stuff. This deck is very wacky to say the very least. I have no idea how it plays. In theory, it should be good. But up to this point, I have not tested it out in battle yet, so this could either go good or bad. So let's get this started. This deck's Luminize chant, if you want to know it, is brawls are easy when your opponent defeats themselves. Luminize Dragonblood Eyes, mostly because you make your opponent beat the shit out of themselves. Okay, let's take this started. Let's start this off. Okay, the flag is Dragonblood. Obviously, you can use Dragonblood and generic cards. The buddy is Dark Roar, Catastrophe Abyss. 8k power, 6k defense, critical of 2, size 3. Pay 2 gauge and put the top 2 cards of your deck into the soul to call it. When a monster on your opponent's field is destroyed, put the top card of your deck into your gauge. It's by any means. And at the start of each player's attack phase, choose a stand monster on your opponent's field and attack this card with the chosen monster. Double attack, soul guard, and counterattack. So that's pretty much what the main gimmick of this deck is. They focus on destroying your opponent's monsters, mainly by effects, technically speaking counterattack, to gain gauge, deal damage, gain life, deal then, get rid of their gauge, etc. And they all do it by, and most of the size 3s, have the ability where at the start of your opponent's attack phase, this is the only one that says during both players' attack phase, but most of them just say start of your opponent's attack phase, pick one of those standing monsters and ram it into this thing. And that's pretty much what happens. They ram into it, even if this monster dies, as long as it has Soul Guard and stays on the field, counterattack will go off and then you'll get its special abilities. So that's pretty much what this deck does. 4 copies of Moon Fantastic Madness Luna, size 0, 1k power, 1k crit, and 2k defense. Dragonblood Sect monsters on your field being attacked get plus 10k power and defense. That includes this thing. So this thing immediately becomes a 12k defense and an 11k base, and that just applies to all your monsters. Which means your buddy becomes a 18, 16, and everything just hits wacky numbers. So like they have to get really big numbers to ram into them. But if you have Luna on the field and you're using your ability and forcing one of their cards to attack, unless they're playing Max Dragons, that attack's gonna fail. So 4 copies. 4 copies of Bloodstained Dark Princess Morrow Ellis. 2k power, 1k defense, critical of 1, size 0. If you would call Dragonblood Sect, the gauge cost written in its call cost is reduced by 1. That's really useful because I believe the Ace monster costs 2 gauge, so it's just 1. Wait, I'm pretty sure every size 3 in this deck costs 2 gauge, so pretty much call the best cards in your hand for 1 gauge. And when this card enters the field, you may drop a hand card. If you do, put up to 1 Dragonblood Sect monster with eyes in its card name from your deck to your hand and shuffle. The Eyes series is like the best Dragonblood Sect. I only own the first one, but it's basically the Ace monster of this deck, and this is just really helpful to search it out and just get huge numbers. So 4 copies. 4 copies of Dirty Rag Black Cloth. 3k defense, 1k power, 3k power, 1k defense, critical of 1, size 1. Put this card from your hand into the soul of a Dragonblood Sect monster on your field. If you do, you put the top card of your deck into your gauge. And when the Dragonblood Sect monster with this card in its soul attacks, destroy a card on your opponent's field. So pretty much, if it's in the soul of something, you can destroy something when it attacks. And since all your abilities go off when a monster in your opponent's field is destroyed, it doesn't matter what the means are. If they're destroyed in general, I'm pretty sure it has to be by effects, but this still counts. You can gain effects off it. So being able to just nuke a card in your opponent's field to trigger a bunch of effects and still get soul off it is really useful. So 4 copies. 4 copies of Foul Swoop Deep Lurker. Size 2, 5k power, 5k defense, critical of 2. Put this card from your hand into the soul of a Dragonblood Sect monster on your field. Souls in the Dragonblood Sect with this card in its soul cannot be dropped by your opponent's card effects. During your opponent's turn, if the soul of a Dragonblood Sect monster, if it's in the soul of a Dragonblood Sect monster, when your opponent's monster be destroyed by card effects, you put the top card of your deck into your gauge and gain a life. Not once per turn, which means if one of their things would be destroyed by your card effects, it's a free gauge and a life. That's just amazing. You get gauge, not like the deck, in my theory. In theory, the deck doesn't have a gauge problem at all. Maybe on the first turn, depending on what ends up in your hand. But after the first turn, there should be no gauge problem. Actually, scratch that. This deck has no gauge problem whatsoever. I'm not even sure why I'm debating about this. Yeah, the deck has no gauge problem. No matter how you start this off. This just makes sure that you will never have a gauge problem. And you just gain extra life. So, and since not once per turn, the more you kill stuff, the more life and gauge you get. So, 4 copies. 4 copies of the buddy. I already went over him. 4 copies of Dance of Grim Light Dancing Razor, one of my favorites. 8k power, 8k defense, critical of 2, size 3 as well. Pay 3 gauge and put the top 2 cards of your deck into the soul. Okay, scratch that. This is the only one that actually costs 3 gauge, so this might end up being a gauge problem on the first turn, but after the first turn, it's never going to be a gauge problem. When your opponent's monster in your field is destroyed by your card effects, drop one of your opponent's gauges. And this is why it's my favorite. It makes your opponent have a gauge problem. Because counterattack, if you have the Dirty Rag and Soul effects, it's literally just drop a gauge. You can spam this during your turn, your opponent's turn, make it so that they'd have no gauge whatsoever for their next turn. Aha, beauty. I love this thing. And the other skill, the standard one, at the start of your opponent's attack phase, choose a standard monster in your opponent's field. For this turn, the chosen card must attack this card alone first for the attack phase if able. Move, double attack, soul guard, and counterattack. So if I did not mention that before, that's pretty much what it does. It forces them to be the first ones to attack alone, which means your opponent doesn't really have a choice. But still really good. I love the gauge drop, just prevents them from doing shit. 4 copies. 4 copies of Deep Track, Endless Ladder. 9k power, 6k defense, critical of 2, call cost, pay 2 gauge, and put the top 2 cards of your deck into your soul. When a monster in your opponent's field is destroyed by card effects, you gain 1 life, so pretty much like Foolish Lurker, except minus the gauge. And at the start of your opponent's attack phase, choose a stand monster in your opponent's field, and for this turn, the chosen card must attack this card alone first for the attack phase if able. Triple attack, soul guard, and counterattack. This is the more aggressive size 3, it's like the one they use to beat the crap out of your opponent with. The last one was like more the balanced size 3. This next one is like the semi-aggressive / semi-defensive. So 4 copies, really good. 4 copies of the final monster in this deck, and frankly, all around my favorite. Dragonblood Eyes, Bloody Eyes. I don't know why I was about to say something completely different. 10k power, 8k defense, critical of 2. Call cost, pay 2 gauge, and put the top 3 cards of your deck into its soul. So it's obviously the most defensive. It costs 2 gauge, but with the card that searches it, it's 1 gauge. And when an opponent's monster is destroyed by your card effects, deal 1 damage to your opponent. So just immediately they lose a monster, they take 1 damage, and it's not once per turn. Combo this with Lurker while you're gaining life and gaining gauge, they're taking a bunch of damage. And at the start of your opponent's attack phase, choose a monster at stand on your opponent's field. For this turn, nullify its abilities, and that card must attack alone first for this attack phase if able. Double attack, soul guard, and counterattack. So before I get out how many copies, this is really good. Like, because the other ones just force it to attack. They don't nullify the abilities. This one just nullifies the abilities. So if it had soul guard before, nada. If it had double attack, nada. Anything. Just nullify them, and then it must attack alone. So that's really good. It just makes it so that thing's not living through this unless it has an ability where its abilities can't be nullified and this ability can't be nullified, and if you have like another thing that protects it from being nullified. But 4 copies, really good. It's searchable. It's easily the best size 3 in this deck. All around, really good. Whoops, sorry, wrong zone. 2 copies of non-spells. 2 copies of Spirit, Echo, Raisin, Detray. So put this card into the soul of a Dragonblood Sect monster in your field. If this card's in the soul of a Dragonblood Sect monster, your opponent cannot call monsters from the drop zone. So I don't really run it for that, but it's still useful. And then the real reason why I run it. If this card is in the soul of a Dragonblood Sect, that card gets plus 3k defense and move. So really good. 3k defense is obviously very helpful. And being able to move just in case you have an extra zone, because you do run items, that is useful. So 2 copies. 2 copies of King of Dadan. You may only cast this card if you have a Dragonblood Sect on your field. Put up to 1 card from your drop zone into the soul of a Dragonblood Sect monster in your field. Then you may put the top card of deck into your gauge and draw a card. You may only cast King of Dadan once per turn. So really good. It gets you a free gauge. It gets you a free draw. And like say something that activates only in the soul is in the drop zone. You can just get into the soul or you can just get free soul. Either way, really good. 2 copies. 2 copies of Dragon Hour Execution, Dragon Judge. You may only cast this card if you have a Dragonblood Sect monster on your field. Pay 1 life to use it. And choose a Dragonblood Sect monster in your field. Look at top 5 cards of your deck. Put up to 2 from them into the chosen card soul. And put the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. You may only cast Dragon Hour Execution, Dragon Judge once per turn. So pretty much look at the top 5. Send 2 to soul. Send the rest to bottom. Really good. You can stack your soul. Get more good stuff out of it. And you can stack the bottom of your deck if you so desired. And you somehow remember to the point where it gets to that. 2 copies. 4 copies of Red Wave, Scarlet Finger. You may only cast this card during attack on the opponent's turn, and you have a Dragonblood Sect on your field. Counter nullify the attack and put up to 1 card from your drop zone into the soul of a Dragonblood Sect on your field. This is the only nullify in the deck, but to be fair, your abilities just far enough to make up for it. They destroy your opponent's monsters. You get benefits off it to the point where if they somehow did get past your center, they would either have no more attacks / gauge, aka basically resources, to deal you more damage, or you've got to the point where your life is high enough to where they can't hurt you, or if they could, not by very much, and if they do, you're still going to live the turn. So either way, you only need one nullify, and even when you nullify, you get more soul and you get more counterattack. So 4 copies. Last spell, 4 copies of Dedan Territory. Set all Dragonblood Sect monsters on your field cannot be returned to hand or put to other areas by your opponent's card effects. So if it's in the center, they're not taking it. It's just that simple. And it still keeps move, which means you can move it around, but they can't. And it can't be bounced, which means it's just staying there. And when a monster on your opponent's field is destroyed by your card effects, you gain 1 life and deal 1 damage, not once per turn. So on attack, skill of Dirty Rag, destroy a monster in the opponent's field, gain a life, deal them 1 damage. During your opponent's turn, while you're on Bloody Eyes, by the way, so they take 1 more damage during that turn. While you're on Bloody Eyes, use the skill, steal 1 of their monsters. Oh, look at that, you take a damage, actually you take 2 damage, and I gain a life. Really good. 4 copies, Broken Spell, and frankly my favorite. And then finally, 4 copies of Bogus Purpose Fake Heart, 3k power to crit, pay a gauge to equip it. This card on the field cannot be destroyed by card effects, and at the start of your opponent's attack phase, choose a Dragonblood Sect monster on your field. For this turn, when your opponent's cards attack, change the target of the attack to the chosen card. 4 copies. Pretty much, it's not here to attack. If you can attack by moving Raise into Terror to the Soul, it's fine. But normally you want to have like Marl Ellis on like the right or left, Madness Luna on whichever one wasn't that. So pretty much have 1 on each side, and then call preferably Bloody Eyes, but any of your size 3s to the center. So then you equip Fake Heart, make it so that your opponent can only attack the center this turn, and then Madness Luna will constantly buff it up to where there's no point in even trying to get over it, and your counterattack will just kill them. So really good card, 4 copies. Well, as a deck, I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to raise your flag.
Thank you.